Hey there, thanks for tuning into Duckbricks. I'm Chris, and today we have an early review of some of the new LEGO March Technic sets, which are coming out very soon. There's a pretty big selection here, including 2 F1 cars. Let's take a look right now. Okay, here is the entirety of the March 1st, 2025 LEGO Technic Wave. Of course, a couple of these sets are made to celebrate LEGO's huge push for racing and F1 across a ton of different sub-themes this year, and a number of other ones are related to a couple of other interesting licenses that we haven't seen in Technic form in a long time. The least interesting of which is the tipping dump truck, and obviously we're going to spend the least time on that one because I think some of the other items here are definitely a lot more interesting to dive into. We have 42207, the Ferrari SF24 F1 car, which retails for $230 and comes with 1,361 pieces. We have 42206, Oracle Red Bull Racing RB20 F1 car, which retails for, again, another $230 with 1,639 pieces, showing that while these two cars look similar, they actually do have quite a lot of differences between them. Then we get to some of the other licensed cars. 42205 is the Chevrolet Corvette Stingray, that's the yellow smaller car over there, retailing for $60 and coming with 732 pieces, tying into a video game exclusive. We have 42204, the Fast and Furious Toyota Supra Mark IV, which has 810 pieces for $60, and then finally the non-licensed tipping dump truck 42203 with $50 and 462 pieces. Altogether, the Wave is honestly very racing focused. The dump truck is kind of a strange outlier amongst them, and it is interesting seeing most of the vehicles in this Wave correspond to real-world licenses, whether they be for video games or for movies, or of course to F1 itself, with only one non-licensed car. For me personally, I've always preferred Technic Waves that honestly do more interesting things than just give us different variations of racing vehicles. The submarine that we got earlier this year was really cool. It was a surprise to be sure, but a welcome one, and I would have loved to see something more akin to maybe like a Technic space shuttle. We haven't gotten one of those since the early 1980s and 1990s, and given that the focus of LEGO last year was space, I think that would be super cool. I also loved it when LEGO did more just general, unique vehicles out of Technic, whether it be cranes, construction equipment, or even just space rovers. So this Wave is definitely not my personal favorite, but I do actually really like a lot of the individual models the Wave has to offer, and so let's dive into them right now. We're going to go from largest to smallest just because I feel like there's just a lot more I have to personally say about the larger sets as opposed to the smaller ones. So we'll start off with the one with the highest piece count, which is 42206, the Oracle Red Bull Racing RB20 F1 car. So this is personally my favorite of the entire Wave, and a lot of that is due to the color scheme. I'm really looking forward to picking up the Speed Champions version of this vehicle on March 1st when it comes out, because I feel like the dark blue, yellow, and red color scheme is just super solid for a racing vehicle. Obviously, LEGO didn't come up with this color scheme, that's all thanks to Red Bull and their general logos as well, but I feel like it just really works very well as a large-scale vehicle. With a build as sizable as this, they were able to really capture every single aspect of the very intricate color scheme, something that not even the system version of the car could even accomplish due to the smaller size. Obviously, you have the Hand of God steering up the top. By twisting a gear, you can actually cause the front wheels to rotate. They actually are utilizing some brand new elements, which we'll take a closer look at later in the video, which I'm personally very excited about when it comes to possibilities with construction or buildable action figures, but more on that later. The back wheels also have suspension, utilizing some more unique building techniques, and you can see a hint of that new piece I'm alluding to there, and those are not the only new pieces. Lifting off the back cover of the car reveals a brand new set of elements they have made for the actual hydraulics of the piston engine. These are really a long time coming. LEGO has been using the original vintage LEGO system Technic elements for a long time now when it comes to actually having these pistons move inside the engine, and I'm honestly kind of surprised it took them until 2025 to actually change up how those were done. You see, these new versions of the pieces are essentially identical to the prior versions, except they don't have studs. That's really the only main difference here. They've included 2 new elements in the set to accommodate this. You have the actual piece that holds the pistons, and then the piece that holds everything together. I will say it was a little strange opening this up and seeing versions of pieces I've grown to know and love over the many years that LEGO Technic has been a part of the LEGO ecosystem, and just see those exact parts de-studded, which one could argue removes some of the functionality from them and makes them less useful in some cases, but for me I actually think that that is a pretty needed upgrade for the Technic system. Especially because they don't really fit the design style that we're used to knowing from LEGO Technic, with everything being smooth and there being barely any studs, if any at all. It was a welcome change, and I'm really glad they updated the pieces, although it will be sad to see the original ones go, especially because they just brought them back in clear fairly recently, just a few years ago for the Batman Batmobile, so it's kinda sad to see those go. I do wonder if they will mold these in clear, maybe for more play-oriented sets, so you can really see the pistons moving in and out, because unless you flip the car on its underside like I've done just now, you can't really see the internal workings of the pistons, and it's a fun assembly that allows you to literally change gears and have it rotate at different speeds that really just isn't visible when you play with it. You just kinda have to notice and know it's there when building the model. Of course, with the car on its backside, you can see exactly how the back pistons work. These ones are actually mounted on the bottom of the car, which is quite interesting, corresponding a little bit more to the way it actually works in real life. And again, there are some pretty nifty new pieces used to facilitate this, but otherwise you can see exactly how it's constructed. Going all the way to the front, there are a number of different panels and blades that really make up the underside here, and it's genuinely really impressive just how much detail they were able to factor in. There's a pretty nice, what I believe to be a recolor of the Technic rotor blade element in dark blue to have a single narrow kind of vertical pane arcing down the back of the vehicle, which is a really nice touch. And there are a number of other new panels introduced for this set and its sister set as well, the Ferrari one, that basically achieve the same exact size detail as some of the older panels, but this time they're curved inwards. It's a really interesting design, and one that I'm sure will be appearing in a lot more Technic sets moving forwards. Of course, this set is decked out with a lot of advertising. And much like the real-world vehicle, LEGO has secured the licenses of all of these as part of the co-branding sponsorship to do the Red Bull car and all of the other F1 cars in general. This has led to some interesting controversy online, with the Speed Champions line including a Cash App branded car and a Kick branded car, which are a little bit questionable to market towards kids, but I think the Red Bull one actually does kind of get away because really it's just marketing Oracle, Rocked. Maybe Red Bull as an energy drink is more of an adult thing, and LEGO definitely wants to market that towards adults, but honestly it's not quite as bad as promoting gambling platforms towards kids, so I'll take it. Moving onwards, you can see the way the back of the model is built with some of those inverse curved panels I was talking about there, and looking at the front of it, it is really nicely done. But now the question remains, did LEGO release two identical cars for $230 each for this year's LEGO Technic lineup? And the answer is, well, no. While obviously they share the same shape, style, form factor, and scale, both being F1 vehicles, they could not be more different in the way they're constructed. In fact, the Ferrari car, which we're about to look at, has 300 less pieces than the Red Bull one. And that was a little bit strange to me initially, because I always thought that these two cars were very similar. In fact, when images first released, I basically assumed they were going to be identical builds. Maybe a couple colors swapped here and there, but I assumed it was going to be very similar to LEGO's color swap sets. And they have done this for Technic before, released the exact same set but in different colors, so I thought this was kind of one and the same. But just taking a look at the underside, you can see just how different these two vehicles are. In fact, there's barely any similarities between the two of them, even when it comes down to the way the cars are shaped on the bottom. They just have completely different frames, which was really surprising to me, but one that actually goes to show the love and attention to detail the LEGO Technic team has put into depicting these cars. Despite them being built out of pretty much completely different systems, they are essentially the same exact scale, and achieving the same form factor despite having them feature different frames and different sizes of pieces and just different constructions in general is genuinely very impressive, and it just made me appreciate the LEGO Technic design team even more because they were able to pull this off. Of course, removing the back cover, you can see a fairly similar setup to the way that things are done in the other vehicle, but this time it's a little more exposed, allowing you to get a better look at those brand new piston pieces. You also have a double-sized lever for the actual gear change, which I'm a little mixed on. Having the exposed axles is a little strange to me, but overall it is very cool to see the functions working the way they're intended with these brand new elements, which definitely do look and feel a lot more in line with the Technic branding, as opposed to the previous ones which had system studs partially on top of the actual pistons. Flipping the model over to the underside, you can see an even better look at the way the pistons are working here. It's basically the same exact setup as the previous car, except this time they are a bit more exposed. Of course, as far as the rest of the vehicle is concerned, I feel like if LEGO had to do two F1 vehicles at this scale, these were basically the two to do. You have your classic red Ferrari that is bound to be a good seller because of the iconography of the entire piece, as well as the fact that it is a just really big red car and kids love that. And then you have a different type of color scheme entirely with the dark blue version of the Red Bull car, which is just a very different look and feel. Thankfully, LEGO did not decide to make just like 10 different versions of this vehicle. I think at $230 that would be a very, very hard pill to swallow for hardcore collectors who would want to get the entire lineup, and I think Speed Champions was definitely the line to do it for, especially because many of these Speed Champions cars are a lot more similar in build compared to one car versus the next, as opposed to this one, which is very, very different than the other car in the series. Moving onwards, we can take a look at just some of the brands that are advertising alongside this vehicle. It's still a little strange to see an official Palantir logo on a LEGO piece, but otherwise it is a really interesting model in general, and I do like that they were able to keep it 100% accurate with the branding. But now we're getting to this really interesting piece that I wanted to mention as we wrap up the review of these larger cars. It's basically a mixel joint attached to a Technic axle and pin connector, which is going to be so useful for construction builds and kind of mixing in Technic with mixel jointed mechs. I cannot wait to see what folks come up with that piece. But with that, I think we can move on to some of the smaller offerings of the Wave, and we're going to start off with the Fast and Furious Toyota Supra, set number 42204. Once again, it has 810 pieces and retails for $60 US, which is a pretty good ratio, but again, it is Technic, so a lot of those pieces are small, and this is a pretty basic vehicle with a couple of interesting attachments to it. Of course, you have the Hand of God steering, and I actually really like the way they are able to do the moving pistons on this car. These are not new pieces. I guess they're relatively new. They were introduced, I believe, last year or the year before. It's a very recent addition to the Technic lineup that allows them to just have more compact pistons inside cars. You do have stud attachments on the end of those, and they actually move in a very satisfying motion. Lifting up the back trunk, you can see some details that actually directly tie into the Fast and Furious franchise, like the speaker there, as well as the quintessential nitrous oxide, which every Fast and Furious car needs to have in case Vin Diesel ever wants to take his family to space ever again. Of course, you have the Fast and Furious license plate on the back there, which is a nice touch, kind of showcasing where this car comes from, because folks who are not familiar with the movies might not recognize it instantly, so it's good to have some of that actual movie branding on the car itself. On the underside of the car, here's a closer look at how those actual piston elements work. It's a very clever system that is super smooth, allowing the individual tiny pistons to move up and down, and it just works really well as a play function. You can see that it is very satisfying to spin the wheels and to allow those to turn. Of course, you do have the functionality to open up the door as well. Lots of stickers on this smaller model, but it makes sense given the livery of the car, and thankfully the arches over the wheels are printed. Inside the actual driver's seat, you can see a speedometer sticker right there, and the seats themselves have stickers on them, which is a nice touch, just adding into a little bit more of the detail factored into the vehicle and tying into the fact that this is a movie replication of the actual model. Moving onwards to the front of the car, you can notice that there were some annoying stickers, I will have to say. You kind of had to place some stickers on the inside of these right angle degree plates, which is very strange. I do not want to do that again, but I guess LEGO hasn't really figured out how to print those, so it is what it is. It also, however, is very cool to get so many copies of these transparent clear headlight elements. They're basically just panels in trans clear, and it includes 6 of them, which is really cool to see. see, and definitely some of the most interesting parts in this set. Moving on to the next vehicle here, we have the Chevrolet Corvette Stingray, and this actually ties into the Forza video game, where purchasing this set included a pamphlet within the box to unlock the car digitally in the game, so that's kind of a neat surprise. Definitely cool that LEGO is doing more video game tie-ins, and this is depicting one of the cars you can actually see in the game, which is very cool. Now, the set itself is a little less interesting, at least to me personally, than the Fast and Furious one. For one, the front hood doesn't really have any detail to it, so it kind of just opens for show. The headlights are just stickers as opposed to the really cool Technic panel clear elements we saw for the previous car, but they do make up for it by including double pistons on the back of the vehicle, so you can see that it's just using the same exact way that the actual standard pistons are built, but this time they are mounted at an angle, so you can actually see them moving in a kind of synchronized fashion as you spin the car wheels. Very, very satisfying to really spin those up. And again, these pieces are a work of art, incredibly frictionless. I'm sure a lot of engineering and fine-tuning went into making them the perfect pieces for this type of motion, and it's just very impressive how all of that is pulled off. Color scheme wise, a yellow and black car is normally pretty cool, and I feel like that would be pretty interesting, but I don't know, I feel like we've gotten a lot of these from Technic in the past, such that it wasn't the most interesting thing to me to build, and while it was still cool to be able to put this one together, I definitely do like the Fast and Furious one more, just because there's just more stuff I feel going on with that car, from the interior detail, to the speaker on the back, to the nitrous oxide, and of course, the fact that it is a movie vehicle, which is always very cool to get out of Technic. I definitely just feel like the other one was a bit more interesting. That being said, opening up the doors inside this one does reveal a full interior, and there are stickers for the seats themselves, which are nice to see. Just a little bit of extra detail factored in here, but then of course the rest of the vehicle is just pretty nicely shaped, not much else I have to say about it. It does debut a few new panels in yellow, particularly some of the smaller panels and some of the angled panels, and those are always good for building your own Technic or Bionicle creations, so I definitely cannot complain about that. Moving on from this car though, I think it's time to talk about the final set of the Wave, and that one is probably the least interesting to me. And if I were to be purchasing this Wave myself, this is probably the car I would skip. It's 42203 tipping dump truck, and it retails for $50, but comes with only 462 pieces, which for a Technic set is honestly not great value. Now, the car itself is honestly pretty uninteresting. It's just a standard dark blue truck, which doesn't even have anything to unload for the cargo. I feel like even if they had just included a few, like, maybe 2x2 cylindrical rock elements, or just a ton of, like, individual studs, it would have made this a lot more fun to actually have the tipping function do something, but otherwise, the function itself is very slow to operate. It's using one of those older piston elements, which you kind of spin around and cause it to articulate, and of course the back does open up, but there's literally nothing to pour out of the tip bed, which feels like a bit of a missed opportunity to me when it comes to playing with the model. Of course, you do have Hand of God steering, which I feel like is kind of essential for every Technic set nowadays. Even the polybags have steering, so it's nothing really to write home about, and while the color scheme is nice, it is pretty rare to get a smaller LEGO Technic set that is dark blue. It is a pretty nice parts pack as it is. Altogether, the set itself just doesn't really excite me. I can't imagine this being the most sought after vehicle of the Wave, and definitely just feels like a weaker choice of offering for the Technic sub-theme. That being said, it isn't a race car, and it is offering something a little different as opposed to the rest of the Wave, so I can see why they chose to do this. Obviously, for kids wanting to be more interested in construction or more utilitarian vehicles, this is the set for them. It's just personally not something I'm super interested in myself. The license plate having the set number 42203 is a nice touch though. I do like how they actually included that as an Easter egg, and I also like how the brand of the truck is just truck. That's just so funny to me for some reason. Overall, this is a very interesting Technic Wave in the fact that it debuts two very similar large vehicles that are built surprisingly differently, and then offers a movie car and a video game car, and then just a standard construction car. It's definitely a very licensed heavy wave, and I'm very curious and excited to see what LEGO Technic is doing in the summer. There's a lot of rumors swirling around about some more exciting vehicles coming out for the June and August waves, so I'm certainly looking forward to those, maybe even a little bit more than these, but with that, I've summed summed up my early review of the Technic March sets. Let me know in the comments, what do you think of these vehicles? Do you like them? Do you dislike them? Which ones will you be picking up when they release in just a few days this upcoming Saturday? Thank you so much for watching, and apologies for the delay on putting out some videos on the channel. I'm actually currently in the process of completely redoing every single LEGO display in my basement and filming a gigantic tour to celebrate that. So that's kind of why I haven't been able to put out a lot of videos, because the basement is in complete disarray. A ton of things are off the shelves. Literally every single wall display has been taken down, and I'm doing a brand new system of organization. There's a lot of changes going on, but trust me, the final result will be worth it. So bear with me here, and it might take a little longer for some videos to come out, especially some scheduled reviews, but when all is said and done, I'm hoping by this time next week, because by this time next week I will be moving away from my collection, and I wanted to do this as one final thing before I move, as kind of a celebration before the collection is put away. Just bear with me, and it's going to be really good, and stay tuned for a massive LEGO tour coming soon. So thank you so much for watching, thanks for being patient as I put out videos a little bit slower this week, and bye for now.